Nikki, I'm an owner of a limited company and I'm trying to figure out what my salary should be. I don't want it to be too much, but I don't want it to be too little. Can you help me?
Okay, so today we're just talking about PAYE salary, nothing else. We're not talking about dividends, drawings, nothing else. Just what you actually put through on your payroll for your salary as a director stroke shareholder, so an own and managed business. So there's quite a few different variations. So I'll try and go through them simplistically as much as I can. But as always, do get personal advice to make sure you're getting the right way for you. One option is if you are a completely bootstrapped new business, you may actually not be paying yourself anything in salary. So you may decide that option. There's just not there's going to be no money to pay for salaries for a certain time, and you'll getting sweat equity instead, essentially. So in those circumstances, as long as you don't have an employment contract and you're a director, that is okay. It's not the best thing, it's not very tax efficient, and it's not great not having any money, but that is what some new startups do. The second is I'm going to talk about the startup option where you have got some funding. So again, you're still will be fairly bootstrapped. However, you have got some funding. So what you would normally do is you would take you wouldn't be expecting to go into a profitable situation for a while, therefore there's not even a consideration that you could have potential dividends. So you're just thinking about a salary. You're typically not paid a full market rate, but hopefully you are being paid enough to be able to live on. So it may be, you know, anywhere between sort of 20 to 50 grand, depending on circumstances, etc. That is usually the sort of range. I usually sort of see 30 or 40 in these sorts of scenarios. The third is when it's a more mature business, it's making profits, and so you might want to be going down quite a tax efficient route, and you might only go down, or actually I'm not doing a salary employment, an employment contract. I therefore don't have to worry about national minimum wage. I am just going to take a very small salary, and it will depend quite where you hit the threshold. But for a lot of business owners, the most tax efficient way is to go up to the national insurance threshold. Some may go slightly higher and go to the personal allowance threshold. Always crunch the numbers, either yourself or with your accountant, to see because sometimes it can be slightly different depending on what your circumstances are. But that's still, you're talking into the ballpark of 8 to 12,500 essentially, depending on where you are. But by getting to the national insurance threshold is a very key thing, because what that does, it gets you what we used to call your pension stamps. So it makes sure that contributes to the future for when you do hopefully one day get a state pension, and it will contribute, which I think at the moment is about 35 years you need to have of contributions to it. But you only need to go up to the threshold to count as a contribution. At the moment, the fourth one is you may expect this particularly is done when it is a more mature business. It particularly if you've got multiple shareholders, multiple directors, and also often when you're actually getting into gear before a sale, you often would be looking to take more of a market rate salary, because especially if you're going to be selling in your perhaps you've got a small part of business and you're wanting to stay on, you don't want to then have the conversation of why actually I wasn't paying myself a market rate and now I want a pay rise. So you know you do that, and also when when you've got multiple shareholders, there's more of a feeling of making sure that you're getting a market rate salary for the work that you're doing, and then the any dividends that you do get are proper contributions from your return on capital. So of course that completely is huge scale, depends what you do, what sector you're in, how big the company is, how complex it is, as to what that market rate could be. There's a whole wide variety of options there. You can change, as you know, you should always review this every year as you go through cycles. Another thing, one thing to consider as well is what borrowings you're going to potentially be wanting to get. If you're borrowing with the company, sometimes there's restrictions on you having dividends, therefore it's important to have a reasonable salary, but also conversely, ends up with the same thing, is if you're trying to borrow money, particularly something like a mortgage, sometimes it's more sensible to have more of a salary with certain lenders, but you know, you do have to look at what that actually costs you in tax terms, etc., by having higher salaries. So there's a whole myriad of different mixes, but so do ask your accountant for your specific circumstances, but hopefully that gives you quite a few different options and some things to think about.